Hey everybody, welcome to Creative Mornings Atlanta. It's Friday, y'all, and you know what? We made it. So if this is your first time ever with Creative Mornings Atlanta, put a 1 in the chat so we know it's you. Also, tell us in the chat where you're coming from here. We're virtual, so you could be living in Atlanta, you could be living all over the world. So tell us about that. Also, if you're here in Atlanta, one perk for you, pun intended, because I'm telling dad jokes this morning, is you can get free coffee and a pastry on us. Thank you to our coffee partner this month, East Pole Coffee. So you got to get there before noon. And you got to tell them you're with Creative Mornings. So go to there. Maybe not right now because now you're watching us. But make sure you do that before 12 p.m. Tell them Creative Mornings Atlanta sends you there. Also, if this is your first time, Creative Mornings isn't just happening in Atlanta. It's actually happening in over 200 chapters all over the world, all on the same theme every month. So that's pretty cool. There are creative people all over the world doing this, just like we are in all their different homes and places. I also want to give a special shout out, and I should have introduced myself to really tell you that, hi, my name is Amina Brown, and I am your chapter organizer for Creative Mornings Atlanta, but I am not doing this by myself. There is not only a whole crew of folks behind these cameras today, but there are also so many rock stars on our Creative Mornings Atlanta team. So shout out to them. Also, while I'm up here talking to y'all, I don't want to forget this. We're looking to add some social media volunteers to our team. So if that is you and you're interested, you can DM us on Twitter or Instagram. You can follow our accounts there. And you can also email us atl@creativemornings.com. If that's you and you're interested, hit me up because you could become a part of a team of amazing people. We love to see it. Okay, our theme this month is matriarchy, and I have a lot of special feelings about this theme because I'm a huge supporter of women being in leadership. And in every situation I've ever been in, women being in leadership was the best thing. It's the best thing. So we're exploring that theme with our poet that you're going to get to hear from in a little while, with our speaker today. It's going to be amazing. And I also feel partial to this theme because our whole volunteer team for Creative Mornings is all women. So we love to see it. We love to see women in leadership. Let's explore what that could be like. We couldn't do this event for you for free without the support of all of our partners. So we want to thank our global partners today. We want to thank MailChimp. I hope you're using MailChimp. They have so many services to offer. MailChimp, just like Creative Mornings, values community. So they have a special insider community for freelancers and agencies, and that's called MailChimp and Company. It's designed to help you grow your business, expand your expertise, and then you can get some insider perks. And you know what? It's free. And I know y'all love free stuff because I also love free stuff. So make sure you take a look at mailchimp.com/andco. That's ANDCO. You should hopefully see some of these links beginning to pop up in the chat. So make sure you check that out. We also want to give a big thank you to our global partner, Skillshare. Skillshare is our global partner for online learning, and Skillshare is an online learning community that helps millions of people take their next step on their own creative journey. So I want to bring your attention to 2 events that are coming up. First, there is an Adobe Photoshop Essentials training course. I want to thank all of you who understand what Adobe Photoshop does, because I don't understand any of that at all. And if that's you, you could also do this training course so you could understand some things. Daniel Scott will be facilitating that. And the second one I want to draw your attention to, former Creative Mornings speaker, Holly M. I think this is Colby Murchison. Holly Murchison. Holly is going to be facilitating Creating Your Dream Career. And after experiencing this part of the pandemic, I know many of us are thinking about our work and is it actually working for us? So you can definitely check that out. Make sure you do it. Also, I want to give a big old thank you to our video partner, Off the Record. They are the reason why all of this looks so crispy and amazing. And let me tell y'all, every month we are literally reinventing what we're doing for various reasons. And Off the Record is an amazing content creation, Latina-owned agency. So if you are looking for fresh ways to tell the story of your business, your company, your project, your nonprofit, you want to hire Off the Record, do it. Go to their IG, follow them. That's at Off the Record, off THA record. And you can also go to offtherecord.com. Don't forget to do those things. Now, I'm so excited to do this introduction. Many of you that may have been familiar with me before know that I perform spoken word poetry as my regular job, and I'm doing Creative Mornings in my spare time. But this poet that we have today is a part of what helped really build what is the poetry scene in Atlanta. So I'm really excited for you to hear from her, and she is a matriarch in her own right. I want you to give it up for educator, storyteller, poet, author, poetry slam champion, host of award-winning open mic Java Speaks, author of 2 books, After This We Go Dark and Drowned, A Mermaid's Manifesto. Give it up for poet Teresa Davis.
It's Teresa Davis, and I'm going to start off with a poem about becoming a mother. This is called State of Being. You be woman, 9 months pregnant, full of hope and apprehension. He be deadbeat dad of the future, but you be hopeful, knowing you can do this by yourself, wondering if you can do this by yourself. You be working and surviving, making house into a home, preparing for who's to come. You be scared sometimes, but pushing forward. You be in labor, pushing more than dreams, and he, after 18 hours of devotion, he crowns, and he be perfect. You count his fingers and toes just to be sure. His tearful cries announce his arrival. You be exhausted but proud. Too many emotions to pinpoint one. He grips your finger. You be amazed at his strength. Imagine it mirrors your own. Your smile expands wider than gravity should allow. And despite the shake in your arms, you hold him close. His baby smell assaults your senses, and you be in love. He be you be he. You put your face right on top of his. Whisper a prayer wrapped in a promise. He opens his beautiful one-day brown eyes, accepting all that is life, all that is you together. You stare into the eyes of your future, and your future stares back. You relax your jaw, unclench your spine, unhinge your apprehension, close your eyes, not to sleep, but to marvel, because now you understand. You be mother, he be your son, and all be right in the world. That was that. Thank you. And then, sometimes I get a little political with it. So this is for the women of the Congo and for the women of the world. Starts with an epigraph. Now that you have touched the women, you have struck a rock, you have dislodged a boulder, you will be crushed. Women's Freedom Song, 1956. Continental shifts only change our geography. The topography of pain still prevalent, concrete or dirt, our feet walk the same path streaked in blood, sweat, trials, tribulations, fingers tangled, screams swallowed, womb traitors. Your fear betrays you. Violence, your coward's way out, and still we wipe constellation from our eyes, rest hands on hips that bear the world's pain and sorrow. See, women know what the future looks like. Umbilical cords of hope tie us to our oppressors. We know that without us, you would not be here to spread your violence full circle to we, who are your grandmothers, your mothers, your sisters, your daughters. Your fear betrays you. Rape our flesh, rape your homeland, starve your futures. You have forgotten where you come from, sold your soul to neglect, noosed your neck with torn hymen that stretched the globe, marking time past and present, but nothing is forgotten here. Women, we are no foreigners to pain, nurture in our nature. You mistake it for weakness, you murderers of motherhood, of humanity. We nurtured you in our wombs, cradled you to our breasts, let life touch the back of your throats, and like levees we break sometimes. But make no mistake, Now that you have touched the women, you have struck a rock, you have dislodged a boulder, you will be crushed, and the warm flowing womb waters at once embrace you will no longer tolerate these transgressions. We will no longer give birth to you by water, womb traitors. It will be by fire. Next time. Now we'll calm down a little bit. Thank you for listening. So I'm pretty sure in 2019, end of summer 2019, I took my first trip to took my first trip to out of the country. So I was in Amsterdam, and I'm pretty sure that I had COVID when I came back. So I was sick for 4 months. And at that time, my daughters had to take care of me. And it took me a long time to admit that there were things happening with me, because, you want to be that, I could do all the things, but I had to just kind of give it up and let them take care of me. This is called Phoenix. As autumn leaned away from winter's kiss, time seemed to stand still. I woke, sweet with the sound of her voice ringing in my ears. The song of fury erased all pain, arms filled with hope and the possibility of her. Did it begin as a pull behind my heart as February found me in love with the idea of love, our bodies moving in the same direction, a question tossed into the breeze? We will wait months for the answer. I offered all my marrow, handed her my love unconditionally, sent her off to college, and awaited her return. My skin, a riot in refusal, took my breath away. The stretch of my neck hid me away for months. Mouth quiet, I chameleoned, became a part of the earth, refusing to show myself and all my flaws. I have yet to remove all the dirt from my hair. No one saw except she did. It's hard keeping secrets from someone who lives inside you. The cost of pain sometimes means mute, but when your skin is so loud, the flames underneath aching to be extinguished, I didn't sleep for months. Gentle fingers wiping spent long tears, the soil turned quicksand and bog. Her life preserver arms saved me, pulled me back to land, offered no harsh words for my protestations, for my lack of faith in my own survival. The taste of resilience sliding back and down the back of my throat, the soft sound ringing in my ears. June has the same scent of hope mixed with gratitude, a mixture made in the morning, an elixir to survive what I once thought I could not. Listen to that. Yay. Thank you. I have two more. And this one goes out to my mom. Growing up, when you're brought up with a family of creatives, things get weird sometimes. This is called tonsorial. When you are a single mother with 3 boys who have hair that they refuse to comb, and school starts soon, there are stores that sell clippers, so you buy a pair. The barber shop is expensive. 3 visits will pay for the clippers. Then there is more money for the clothes they are outgrowing, for the shoes that are always in need of replacing, for the meals missed midday in summer. This practical single mother knows she has no skills at cutting hair. But how hard could it be? She has seen hair cut. Her sons are not eager to be experimental performance art. No one wants to go first. The youngest loses the fight because he sits, not as calm as he pretends. There is a soft buzz, an ouch, a retort of, damn, your ear's big, a little blood, and then, oops. The older brother slaps his hands across his lips to stuff back the expletive that will get his butt beat. The sisters laugh on the stairs. The younger brother advances on the mirror, mouth stretched in a scream that will not come. A tears fall. The mother is upset. She didn't do it on purpose. She apologizes to the crying boy who now has to have it all cut off. A trim turns scalping. The oldest brother declares he wants to grow the biggest afro in the world ever. The middle son takes to grooming like it's his newfound religion, while the younger develops an interest in hats. The Clippers find a new home in a drawer, away from shaking hands. Job done until school begins again. Thank y'all. But listen to that. Now, I want to do a poem that my mother did for her mother. So this is my mother. My mother's name is Alice Lovelace, and this is a book of hers called Black Coffee. And she is considered the godmother of poetry and spoken word in Atlanta. So this is called Praise Song, Mother. Claudia Mae Stanford Lovelace of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and St. Louis on the Missouri side, passed this life January 1st, 1969. Let us give thanks for her being. Birthed a baker's dozen, did not sacrifice innocent eyes, stoked fires from across the room in a stove or under me. Sighs, lullabies, coded epitaphs to mud mothers, scenarios to capture the attention of fretful children. Claudia, an only child fused to this earth by the hands of her children, great and grand, and the love of William. Claudia, ancient, arrogant one, escaped the South, abandoned the African rituals of her father, disinherited the Blackfoot initiations of her mother, elected to cast humanity in her own image, forge life according to her terms. Let us give praise. We stowaways in the secret places of her womb. Let us praise her, communal mother of the Lovelace clan. Claudia, your daughters never witnessed you stumble, never heard you recant. In our recollection, women and strength are synonymous. Maize, yam, palm wine line your rite of passage. Release us, Claudia, as we release you. From the wounds of this earth, rest, content you always fed those seeking love, shelter, absolution. You always had on hand enough cornmeal, rice, beans to quiet thin bellies of your own and others. Arkansas armed you with iron will, still pulse, quicksilver tongues. St. Louis raped your conviction. Children taught you compromise. The 10th, I barely made it over before your leave. Baptized in fire, I grew at times in spite of you. Wounded no less than my sisters, abiding our periods, our blood of periods and laughter. Claudia, where did you bury the calcified dreams, the aborted joys? Release us as we release you from the wounds of this earth. Rejoice, Claudia, while your daughters chant click songs, dance to the fertile dance, plow the fields of your nation in waiting, preparing for your return. Praise song for my mother. That's from Alice Lovelace. Thank you all very much for having me. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Do I go this way? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Teresa Davis, for this wonderful poems that you shared with us. You can follow her at She's Pirate Poet, or you can follow her on, Java Speaks. Now we'd like to thank our sponsors.
Dean Canyas, commercial real estate and constellations, is a cultural developer, has garnered a reputation as a champion for historic preservation. We'll also like to thank our hosts this morning, Indie Studios, which is a 35,000 square feet, mid-century modern warehouse. If you need screen room, if you need a reference library, if you need a lobby bar, Indie Studios is where you should be. We'll drop a link with a 20% discount off your first visit. Also, if you were up and early at 8:15 and you joined us for the Gather Round, we thank you. Gather Round is a meeting for new folks. Gather Round is a team bonding and community engagement platform for people-focused organizations seeking to build relationships and strengthen teams in the era of disconnection and distractions. So unlike Zoom, Gather Round is designed for how humans actually connect. Check out Gather Round for future virtual events, and we'll leave the link on the YouTube. Next month, save the date. The theme is home. Home is where the heart is, as they say. And so Friday, July 30th, we will be hosting you again for home. And finally, add to your calendar, July 9th at 7:30, we will be having our field trip with Yum Day by the founder of Leah Ballantyne. We will be doing a traditional Filipino dessert called Halo Halo, which translates to mix and mix. It's a mix of sweet beans, fruits, evaporated milk, ice, and a bunch of other fun toppings. We shout out to Julia Levy for our field trip captain, who will be hosting this on July 9th. And now it is my pleasure to bring a close friend of mine to the Creative Morning virtual stage, Nikishka Iyengar. Nikishka, born and raised in Mumbai, India, came to America at the age of 17 to attend the University of Texas in Austin. Go Longhorns, since I'm from Texas. Nikishka has spent her years in Atlanta developing social enterprises for people of color that brings real estate with finance. And today we have the honor of hearing and listening and learning what community development means to Nikishka and her family. Our matriarch, Nikishka Iyengar.
Good morning, everyone. I have been such a huge fan of Creative Mornings for a while, so it's an honor to be here today as a speaker, and especially an honor to be speaking on this theme, matriarchy. Before I begin, let me introduce myself in a way that I haven't had the chance to do so before. In a way that puts aside my resume for a minute and tells you less about what I do and more about whose I am and where I come from. My name is Nikishka, and I use she, her pronouns. I was born and raised in Mumbai in India. I am the great-granddaughter of Jayalakshmi Krishnamachari. I am the granddaughter of Shanta Devraj, who we all lovingly call Ba. I am the daughter of Rajalakshmi Iyengar. And I am the sister of Niharika Iyengar. Now, she's my baby sister, so if I didn't include her in this introduction, I would never hear the end of it. That's us dancing together on my wedding day. And I am also the mother to the wildest, sweetest little boy, Orion Iyengar Carmichael, the first son in his family's lineage on either side to carry his mother's last name. I have known for some time now that who I am as a mother and who I continue to become is greatly influenced by the matriarchs of my family. But what I didn't fully realize until coming up with this talk is just how much my work is influenced by them too. In preparing for this talk, I looked up matriarchy on Wikipedia, as one does, and found this definition. Matriarchy is a social system in which women hold the primary power positions in roles of political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property. I thought that last part was especially interesting and relevant, given what my work has evolved into. Here's a little bit about my work. I have been in the social impact space for over a decade now, and my work has spanned international development, climate action, and community development. I moved to Atlanta in 2013 from the Bay Area for a relationship that soon turned toxic and abusive right after I moved. In the slow process of getting back on my feet, I bought a house in 2015 and decided to do something different with it. In college, I had lived in student housing cooperatives that gave me some of my best college experiences. And later, when I graduated and lived in the Bay Area, I had seen various versions of startup houses where founders lived together and worked together on their startups. So when it was time to buy a house, I decided to combine both those past experiences and create a residential incubator for social entrepreneurs in Atlanta called the Guild. At the time, I had a job at a big management consulting firm, and my focus was on helping Fortune 500 companies become more sustainable and socially responsible. I was growing frustrated with the slow progress we were making at these companies, which is a story for another time, but I really wanted to get involved in work that was impactful locally. The Guild became my way to do that. I got the name the Guild from permaculture, which is an approach to land management. And in permaculture, a guild is a grouping of plants, animals, and insects that all work together to ensure the health and productivity of each other. So the goal was to create a guild of people working at the intersection of social justice and entrepreneurship. The first iteration of the Guild brought together social entrepreneurs and provided not just affordable housing, but also a program and community to help these entrepreneurs holistically. So we would do everything from business workshops to social justice trainings, and even things like yoga and mindful meditation. And this was all before self-care became the mainstream mantra that it is. We were actually trying to create a space of collective care for people who are doing the work to make the city more equitable. It should come as a surprise to no one on this call that Atlanta, the so-called Black Mecca, is also a city with the deepest inequality, where gentrification has made it so that Atlanta's Black communities continue to get displaced from their homes and neighborhoods. Atlanta is a real estate city, and the real estate industry has been at the heart of creating so much of this deep inequity. And as y'all know, housing, or the lack of it, is also at the heart of almost every social problem. Without safe and secure housing, you can't expect good educational outcomes, child development outcomes, good health outcomes, or just economic outcomes overall. In those early years of the Guild, thanks to the Beltline and some other key developments in the city, we had already started to see gentrification skyrocket. Gentrification and the displacement of Black families from historically Black neighborhoods was a topic of conversation at most of our Guild gatherings. Up until then, I had only been thinking about the work of the Guild from a program standpoint, not really from a real estate angle. But that quickly shifted when I started to pull back the layers and realize that gentrification was just one symptom of a larger systemic problem, and that almost every social inequity that Atlanta and other cities are grappling with, from police brutality to homelessness, can all trace its roots back to how the real estate industry works in coordination with public policy to keep poor and working class Black and other communities of color oppressed. So one of the many things that was incubated at that early Guild incubator was an alternative real estate model where residents, not developers, not investors who have no stake in these neighborhoods, but residents get to own and control the assets in their own neighborhoods. I'll talk more about this model a little later. But like I said, until I was putting this talk together, I didn't fully realize how all the matriarchs in my family who made our house a home influenced my work. This work of building an alternative real estate model and industry that sees housing as the human right that it is and not a commodity. But first, let me tell you about these matriarchs in my family that led me to where I am today. The matriarchs in my family practice deep, radical care. I was one of the lucky kids who got to be raised by both my parents and my grandparents. My mom's parents, Ba and Tata as we call them, lived with us, my parents, my sister, and I, in our small 2-bedroom apartment. Our living room would double up into a bedroom at night, and most nights my sister and I would find ourselves lying on the floor next to Ba, making her tell us stories until she fell asleep mid-sentence, and then waking her up with a "what happened next?" until she gave us a few more lines before she fell back to sleep. She always told the best stories. Some of my fondest memories involve Ba picking me and my friends up from school. My mom worked late most days, but it was hard to feel her absence with Ba around. Her picking us up from school would be a whole ordeal. She would carry snacks with her because she knew I probably didn't finish the nutritious, delicious lunch she sent me to school with, for which she probably woke up at 5:30 in the morning to prepare. And because she knew what was otherwise an 8-minute walk from school back home would probably turn into an hour-and-a-half adventure through the park with my friends. So Ba just followed us around, making sure all of us got bites of whatever snack she had made from scratch for us. She always brought enough for my friends, including the fish that I would feed at the park. Ba wasn't and isn't just my Ba. She's everybody's Ba. That's been the running joke in our neighborhood, that my grandmother is everybody's grandmother. To this day, when my best friends go visit her, she's there to feed them her famous dosas and ghee, armed with stories about how she'd be chasing all of us through the park, trying to get us to eat when we were kids, and how nothing has really changed. To this day, when I call her, her first question is, "Did you eat?" Or at least that used to be her first question until I had my son. Now it's always, "What did my great-grandson eat today?" My mom, Ba's daughter, is no different. If you're around the matriarchs of my family, be rest assured that you're getting fed one way or another, through food or through stories, but usually both. Here's another thing about the matriarchs in my family. Each generation of matriarch in my family has given the next generation opportunities to break free from oppressive and patriarchal traditions. Ba, for example, didn't force arranged marriage on my mother, as was the norm back then, and still is in a lot of places. Both her kids, my mom and my uncle, dated and married spouses from outside of our quote-unquote community. When my dad was dead set against me coming to the US on my own for college, a decision that I had had my heart completely set on for different reasons, my mom not only supported the decision, she also set aside her own savings and her own income to fund my education here. There's so much that I can say about the ways in which my mom has, throughout my childhood, created space for me to expand my imagination and create a life that lined up with that imagination. But I'll leave it at this one small example in the interest of time and to spare y'all having to see me get emotional. Going back to the definition of matriarchy for a second, that involves control of property. What would it look like if our cities were developed by matriarchs like mine? How would our city, how would Atlanta look if it embodied the same radical care that the matriarchs in all our lives do? How would we design our city if we were thinking about the generations to come ahead of us? Here's one example of what that might look like from the Bay Area. A few months before the pandemic hit, in the cold winter months, a collective of unhoused Black moms who were all working multiple jobs but still couldn't afford to pay the skyrocketing rent in Oakland had settled into a house that was owned by a corporation. That house had been sitting vacant for 2 years. Currently, in the US, there are about 31 vacant housing units for every homeless person. Let's think about how violent that is for a minute. How violent it is that mothers and matriarchs, like the Moms for Housing mothers, have to live on the streets or in their cars with their children, while corporations, investors, and developers just sit on housing stock, waiting for prices to increase. With Moms for Housing, Their goal was to not only create a safe space for their own children to live, but also to raise national awareness about the epidemic of homelessness in California and the rest of the country, an epidemic that is completely manufactured by the real estate industry. This act of civil disobedience sparked similar movements across other cities that were strengthened when the pandemic hit and when the threat of evictions were looming large. As a testament to these Black matriarchs organizing, Wedgwood, the corporation that owned the vacant house, sold it to the Oakland Community Land Trust in what will be the first of many homes that Moms for Housing will run for single mothers, unhoused mothers that can live there and have access to a whole range of services. What would it look like if this was the norm? If we as citizens demanded that our industries and our policies embody the same radical care of matriarchs? If vacant houses weren't owned by investors or corporations, but were instead homes that were stewarded by matriarchs like the Moms for Housing or like the matriarchs in my family? What would it look like if we were able to break free from oppressive traditions that have made it so that land and housing are commodities to be sold for a profit? What would it take for us to imagine an alternative future where we saw housing as a human right and not a commodity that only some people are deserving of? A lot of my work boils down to these fundamental questions. When I think about the matriarchs in my family and just matriarchy as a concept overall, for me, it's not just about things like, closing the pay gap, which is important, but it's about a completely different way of valuing things. And I think that's a challenge for all of us in this call today, no matter what industry you work in. It could be real estate like me, it could be the music industry, nonprofits, you name it. What are your values and what do you value? It might be helpful to pause every now and then and ask yourself, what would a matriarch do? What would your life look like if you allowed yourself to expand your imagination of what's possible? What would your work look like if you tore down oppressive systems? And what would you create if you embodied the same radical care of matriarchs? Here's a little bit about what mine looks like. As I alluded to earlier, the Guild is developing a flagship initiative called Ground Cover that's focused on creating community-owned and community-controlled real estate models in pursuit of self-determination for marginalized communities. Our pilot project is based in Capitol View, where we're converting a vacant one-story building to 21,000 square feet of retail and permanently affordable housing, all of which will be owned by the community in perpetuity. The model allows for residents in the community to put in as little as $10 a month into what we're calling the Community Stewardship Trust that goes towards buying shares of the property. These community investors then make a financial return in two ways. One, through annual dividends based on the net profits of the property, and two, through appreciation in share price, since the share price is tied to the property value. Now, as development happens in these neighborhoods and property values go up, their share price goes up too, allowing them to build a small amount of wealth. And ultimately, beyond the financial impact of this, they will also get a say-so in what happens in this building, who the tenants are, what rents should be set at, all of that. The goal is to create an alternative model where more people, especially legacy Black residents that make these neighborhoods great in the first place, get to own a stake in it and benefit from the development that happens, instead of development always happening at their expense. Last week for Juneteenth, we had a celebration and collective visioning and imagining at the building, where we asked residents across different generations about what they wanted to see in the space. This wasn't just a check the box kind of community engagement that developers in Atlanta love to do. This property is ultimately going to be owned and governed by them, so it was important for us to make sure their voices are centered throughout the development process. Going back to the theme of matriarchs breaking free from oppressive traditions, on the left here is the oppressive tradition, which is the status quo of real estate development, where the industry views housing as a commodity versus the human right that it is. So naturally, gentrification, evictions, the widening racial wealth gap, these are all just symptoms of that larger oppressive tradition. And on the right here is ground cover, which is the alternative, where community residents get together and buy back the block. They get to build some community wealth and have a say-so in what happens in their neighborhoods and build community power. So ultimately, for me, matriarchy is about embodying radical care and freedom from oppressive traditions. It's about creating a new system that values things completely differently, that is affirming of all people and all life. So what does matriarchy look like for you, and how can it show up in your life and work? That's the question I want to leave you all with today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikishka, for sharing what it means to be a matriarch to you and your community. Now, Nikishka and I are going to talk about what made her come all the way down here to Atlanta to help the minority community build real estate and an equitable future for their children. So Nikishka, how did you get from India to Texas, Texas to San Francisco, the Bay Area to Georgia, and not any other city in America to start what you do for the Guild?
Yeah, can you hear me and see me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I mentioned it when I was talking that, there's a personal angle to why I moved here in Atlanta, but why I decided to continue to stay was, Atlanta of my thinking and just me as a person overall. And, when I was talking about the sort of juxtapositions that exist in Atlanta, right? Like Atlanta is the Black Mecca for some people, so it has the lowest economic and social mobility for other folks, and so I think with a city like this, also where neoliberal politics and neoliberalism has such a stronghold on all of us, that it was really important to test out a concept like this here in Atlanta, because if it works here, it'll work, in other places. When we think about just what neoliberalism is really good at, it's really good at giving us the bare minimum under the guise of like significant progress, right? So we have things like diversity and equity that become outcomes we're chasing rather than a means to self-determination and liberation. And I think like when I was saying, just being able to pilot something here in Atlanta, we all know, I see Joiner in the chat, we all know that Atlanta influences everything. Culture is our biggest export in Atlanta, and of course that's like hip hop culture, but just culture overall. When I think about some of these oppressive traditions that I was talking about with racial capitalism and gentrification and displacement and the racial wealth gap, these are economic problems, but they're cultural problems too. I think the capitalism as a culture is something that we've all bought into to some degree or another, and all have a lot. And so if we think about community ownership as an antidote to capitalism, this is culture shifting work. It is going to take lifetimes to undo and shift some of this culture. And so if we can do it here in Atlanta, we can move to the country and the rest of the world. So I'll just say, because Atlanta influences everything.
Well, we know Atlanta does influence everything, and hopefully other cities are able to duplicate your model one day. So one more question. Can women have everything? Is there a sacrifice to raising a home and trying to uplift a community at the same time?
Can women have it all in this economy? No. Well, let me unpack that a little bit. So I think this question of like, I don't think anyone can have it all in our current model, in our current economy, in our current systems, and I've had to let go and shift my idea of what it meant, like realize that I can have it all. I just can't have it all at once. But the bigger piece, and I think the theme of matriarchy goes back to this, right? Is like, as long as the labor of women and other marginalized genders are invisibilized, we can't have it all. When I talk to my grandma sometimes, I'll catch her saying things like, especially in her old age, she'll say things like, oh, like I'm just a ninth grade dropout, or, say things like that completely minimize the fact that she has literally like birthed and created whole futures for friends um, that are all because of her care and her labor. But she was a high school dropout, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and all of those things, right? And so, but when we're talking about this new way of valuing things, by embedding and embodying the concept of matriarchy, we're talking of new structures, new systems, a new economy that values things differently, that fundamentally starts with valuing the labor of women and aligns incentives with that value, right? So it should be as valuable, and moms that choose to stay home with their kids get to be taken care of, and are inherently valuable. I think the way we design our companies, design institutions, the way we design our economy, the way we design our city, needs that fundamental shift. And I think with the pandemic, we saw a lot of that completely unravel, right? We had a huge childcare crisis. We had women in the workforce. I had no childcare all of last year and damn near lost my mind trying to do it all. And I had to really let go of a lot of things. I had before having a kid, like I really liked my house to look a certain way, and I was very like picky about certain things. And my son was 9 months old, and so when we went into lockdown, he was a little baby, and a couple months later, he was walking around and, I don't know, destroying things in the house. And I just had to let go of things that I was wanted, things that I thought was valuable, like a pretty, beautiful looking house, and just let go and change what I thought having it all meant. And for me now, having it all is having a child that is full of joy and thriving and is taken care of and is nurtured, and that's what it looks like. And if my house is a mess 5 days a week, which sometimes more, that's okay. And so yeah, I think it's just about fundamentally thinking what we value and how we value things. So once we do that, I think women and everybody can have it all.
All right, so final question, and this is coming from the audience. Do you draw strength, inspiration from any historical liberation movements?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I think in general, the Black Power movement, I think about what Malcolm X talks about when in relation to land and liberation, and how there's no revolution without land, and there's no liberation without land. And so I think Black Power movements, I think housing justice movements across cross-cultural, cross-racial lines, housing justice movements for forever. There's a lot of inspiration there. And also it's inspiration, and it's also like reassurance that really what's going to take a shift to happen is movement building. And I think like we're one tiny project, one tiny company, but as long as we stay rooted in the social movements that have been talking about this stuff and working towards these outcomes for literally generations, then yeah, we can hope to see the future that we're dreaming about.
Well, thank you, Nikishka, for spending your Friday morning with Creative Mornings. We appreciate you, and we continue to support you. If you would like to follow Nikishka in the Guild, we will drop their links in the chat. And we want to say thank you. You know, matriarchy, I'm not a mother yet, and hopefully one day. But as we have a community here at Creative Morning and around Atlanta, we thank women like Nikisha and those who are building. We'll see you next month.